Alrighty, so Wargaming just gave me access to this tank in early access, so I'm gonna concept review it. Let me know if you would like to see more of these videos. This is a Siege Mode TD. It's a German TD. It's broadly similar to an STRV, I guess, but it has some odd and unique attributes, so let's look into it. Now, gun performance, you've got a 105mm gun, that's quite nice. Look at this DPM though. 3,300. Now, compared directly to an STRV, exceptional, right? It is way higher, but, and this is where we get the weirdness, look at this mobility. 65 kilometers an hour top speed, 25 in reverse. Now, let's go into siege mode real quick. And suddenly, 20 and 18 in reverse. Look, in terms of siege mode, that is exceptional. You look at the STRVs, they're limited to like 10. 10 forward, 10 in reverse. That's as fast as you can go in siege mode. A lot of people use turbochargers just to make that feel a bit more pleasant because 10 is so limiting. This thing, 20 in reverse. It's double, almost double. 20 forward, sorry. It's almost double in reverse. Absolute madness. However, and I thought Tanks.gg was lying to me, I really did, when it said that the DPM went from 3,313 down to 2,371, a drop of almost 1,000 DPM. It's not lying. That is accurate. When this thing is in siege mode, its DPM drops massively. Its dispersion factors go up. It gets way more accurate, but the drop in DPM is seriously substantial. Very odd tank. Now, as for gun performance, when we compare this directly to something like the STRV 1030, which I think would be the most apt comparison, it does fall short in terms of penetration. 268mm of APCR base pen is by no means bad, and it is benefited by a 1.4K shell travel time, which is certainly speedy, and the heat shells going up to 320mm a pen, which, while it isn't exceptional, it is certainly adequate for tier 9, and the shell velocity only dropping to 1,200 as well, which is certainly not poor for HE shells. But one other thing that we can look at, look at these HE shells! Keeping the same shell velocity, 1,020, but 120mm of pen. That is in the ballpark of the tortoise, that good old British hash, which is so goddamn useful on tanks like the Centurion Axe, the Set 7-1, the tortoise, stuff like that. Gorgeous. What else can we talk about? General mobility. Outside of siege mode, 65 kilometers an hour at top speed, 25 in reverse, horsepower per ton, 23.38. That is rivaling some slower light tanks, right? It is a mobile vehicle out of siege mode, and if we go into siege mode, power to weight is still the same. Which means you will get to that top speed, you will get to that reverse speed very, very quickly. On all types of terrain, look at this. 20 on all types. That is exceptional. My chair just betrayed me. Alright, one thing we should note though. Okay, no, we'll know that later when I actually drive the tank about, because that's going to be a light laugh. One thing we should talk about also, siege mode stats. When you go into siege mode, you get +9 on the gun elevation. When you go into siege mode, you get +9 on the gun depression, and 3 + 9, I believe, is 12. I'm smart. 12 degrees of gun depression, rivaling the Comet. It's gonna feel very, very pleasant working the range line. Now, of course, you do have the curse in this tank that your gun is fixed on the tank. So, if you get your tracks blown off, you can't aim anywhere, which is a bit of a bummer. But this tank does function very differently, as we'll see when I take out for a drive to the STRV. It's novel, it's different, and you know what? I like it. I don't think, because of the way they made the siege mechanics work, I don't think it's the same gameplay nuance as the SDRV 103. It seems to be a tad more versatile, a tad more aggressive, and now we gotta look at the sins of wargaming. These tanks, siege mode Swedish tanks, function, certainly the higher tiers function based on the overmatch mechanic a lot of the time if they want to be played aggressively. So tanks like the SDRV and the SDRV 103B, I think, at tier 10, 40mm of frontal armor, right? There are elements where it's higher, 60 can bounce ridiculous shells, but for the most part, it's 40, and they rely on that overmatch mechanic. Now, I was looking at 45 here, and I was getting scared. Really scared, because what does that mean? That means you can't overmatch with a 121mm gun. You can't overmatch with a 122mm gun. You'd need above a 135mm gun in order to overmatch this vehicle. And you know what? That's true. Because if we take a look at the armor profile, here is what we get. You might look at that green and be very happy, but that is 45mm. You shoot that with anything less than a 125+mm gun, you're going to go right off into the distance. However, there are some weaknesses, and I honestly think wargaming done pretty well with the mitigation of that 45mm defensive structure. Because if we look here, there's 190mm of armor on a flat band right at the front, meaning if you have over 220mm of pen, this is the shot to take. Right on the front, right? But let me think actually. What happens if this tank goes into siege mode? Why can't I scroll up? I'm clearly bad. Okay, there we go. What happens if we go into siege mode and we gun depress? Use all the gun depression. No auto ricochet, not even close. So yeah, that is significant weak spot, but it shares the same curse. And by the way, don't shoot the lower plate, because if you're unlucky, you're gonna get that auto ricochet angle. Right, that shot is far better. Far better. It's flat, it's far better. This tank shares weaknesses with the good old Swedish TDs, and this is something that I cover in my upcoming weak spots video, I think, or maybe one that I've already done. I don't know. Cupolas! Aren't cupolas fun? Well, they're not on these tanks because they are thin. 25mm. 25! I am telling you, any vehicle that meets this tank can pen these cupolas with HE. And it's often worth doing because the mechanics of HE, currently, they explode and deal damage based on the thickness of the armor that they hit, right? And this is 45. Even if you hit low and miss 45mm, you're going to splash your HE or do damage based on that small armor value. And if you hit this cupola, you will get a full HE pen, which will be very, very sexy. So cupola is certainly exploitable on this vehicle. But if you're playing tier 9, you've got about 250mm of pen, take the front flat shot. It's going to be far easier, far more consistent. That's the shot to go for. Now, 1,450 hit points is a little less than the STRV, so it's a little more fragile in that regard. Weighs about 40 tons. Camo, oh, this would be interesting. How does it compare? Very, very similar. Very similar to the STRV in terms of camo. The subtlety of this tank could well be troubling, but, as we're seeing, 10 meters worse base view range. I think wargaming put a lot of work into the actual balance of this tank. I'm legitimately impressed. Huh. Okay, well, enough stats. Let's drive it about in a map for lols. Alright, so here we are on Lakeville, because it gives us access to hard terrain, medium terrain, and soft terrain, so we can really explore the capacities of this vehicle. Bearing in mind, I'm on a press account here, so I have got off-road driving, I've got clutch braking, I've got all the assets that are making this vehicle that much more maneuverable. I've got full field mods, I've got a turbocharger, so you are seeing in this tank the best it can be, and we are gonna get up in a straight line to somewhere around 70 plus kilometers per hour. If we watch that speedometer, we are going up to 70! 70! It just feels so goddamn flexible! But you know what I'm gonna do now? For pure excitement value. Oh, and by the way, you've got a bit of gun depression. I'm not in siege mode right now. I'm not in siege mode. Look, this gun is okay. Like, it's pretty good if you compare it to another gun, and look at the DPM. With my setup here, bond rammer and things like that, I've got a reload of what? 4.8? My DPM is 4,500. You can certainly push the DPM up when you're not in siege mode, but keep an eye on that reload, because we are going to go into siege mode right now, and that reload is going to hop sky high. Here we go. 6.71. That hurts. It really does hurt. And you know what also hurts? 3 seconds to switch between siege mode and travel mode. That's significantly longer than the STRV. However, siege mode, oh boy, does it feel comfortable. Look at this. Look, I've got a Bond turbo on this vehicle, but even if you don't, if you are an avid player or something like the STRV or something like that, this mobility will feel profoundly alien to you. And I'm telling you, heavy tanks, no chance of flanking you. It reverse at, what, 18 base? Over 20 with the turbocharger? Like, it's... The mobility of this thing feels so pleasant. It is a damn sight more flexible as a tank. The concept of this tank is a damn sight more flexible than the STRV is. And it is damn pleasant. Did Peabody just outspot me? That's disgusting. But view range of what, 350? Look at the gun depression, chat. 12 degrees of gun depression, and this is functional as you would expect from these Swedish TDs. Gun elevation as well. Pretty damn nice. Pretty impressive. One thing I want to raise as well, and this is fun, I was looking at the nuances of this tank, and I was thinking, okay, what is exceptional about this tank? Either way, right? And I stumbled upon a little fun little nuance. The soft terrain resistance is 2.3. Now that might not mean much to a lot of you, but to give perspective, that is worse than a Mauschen. That is worse than a mouse. That is the same as a Jagdtiger. That ain't what you expect on a vehicle sporting this mobility, so for shits and giggles, we're gonna take it over to the Valley, a place that you should never ever go, and we are going to just spin it on the spot for lols, just to see how painful it is. Alright, here we go. So, let's just have a turn, shall we? Ugh. Oh, cripes on the cracker, that does feel thoroughly mediocre. Thoroughly! But I'll tell you what, I like this tank. I like the concept of this tank. I feel like it fulfills a niche that is not covered by things like the STRV. I think the flexibility afforded by the more mobile siege mode is great. I really enjoy the concept of this vehicle. I think for high skill cap gameplay, the knowledge of what you can push with that 45mm overmatch, with that 220 odd thick frontal armor, will be really engaging for some higher skill cap players that maybe were a bit bored by tanks like the STRV that just feel so limiting. That said, Wargaming, in my opinion, have done a very good balancing job with even stuff like the switching. right? But switching from siege mode to non-siege mode. And yeah, we're gonna be careful. If we're going here, get shot by a heavy tank, tracks get blown off, we are helpless. But look, I don't have to go into siege mode. I don't have to. I am still fully functional as a tank, not in siege mode, which is just not the case at all for the STRV, because this gun can still move up and down just fine. It can still function outside of siege mode. I like the tank. Someone sue me. Someone hit me. I enjoy it. I haven't played it in a game. I'm going to admit that. I have not played it in a game, but I've got to imagine it's going to be fun. It's going to be unique. So when this tank comes out, I don't know how it's coming out. I don't know what they're going to do with it. But in my opinion, it's worth a pickup in the same way that the Foch 155 may not be outright better than the Foch B. I think it fulfills a different gameplay niche, and in my opinion, this tank is far more high skill cap in terms of its gameplay than the STRVs. I think it has a greater skill ceiling, and I think players of around sort of 55% win rate and plus will get a really good experience picking up this tank and playing it. So now we're going to dump it in the river for lols. Bye-bye, thanks Wargaming, appreciate you giving it to me. Ha! I lived! Oh, by the way, while we drown, the commander is the gunner. And the driver is also the gunner. And the radio operator is the loader. There are 3 people in this tank. I think that's familiar from the STRVs, but it's certainly not familiar from German TDs in general. You take a crew off the Waffenträger Panzer IV, it'll be kind of confused in this tank. So that's one thing to bear in mind. But ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed me taking you through this tank, explaining its weaknesses, explaining its power, let me know, and I'll do more of these when Wargaming give me more tanks. So, thank you very much for your time, and farewell. Check out some commentary that I've done as well. I'll leave the commentary playlist on the outro screen. I actually made content about tanks. Okay, I'm gonna go and blow people up in GTA now.
Humanity peaks at our community manager. He is mentally jacked and strengthening our backs just like the counterweight on the turret of the Challenger. Cause if we find ourselves in a crappy mood, you will brighten our day just through your attitude. Steven and Peabody, badass crew. So please take the song as a token of my gratitude.